Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, and we are here for Getting Good Episode 6. Never resign. If you play to win, then you're going to begin by never giving up. You have to play your heart out, pass the turn, make them turn their cards sideways in order to beat you. And there are two important reasons why you want to do this. The first is for information, to find out as many cards that there are out of their deck. And the second is just for win percentage points. Your opponent will give you like extra turns, and also there are more outs in your deck than you might think there are. So you want to fight for every sliver of a chance to win games, because they all add up in the long run. So the first one we're going to talk about is information. Information, very, very powerful in Magic. The more information you have to work with, the better of a chance you have at actually winning games. So I'm going to talk about a scenario that just happened to me the other day. So I'm at the local game store, and I'm up against an Abzan Renegade Raveler deck. And it's an Abzan deck with a bunch of good Abzan good stuff. He had Grimflare, he had Lingering Souls, but we get to a board state where he's got 8 Lingering Soul tokens. He's got some creatures out. I have no board whatsoever. I'm at 2 life. And I draw my card. It's a land. And I have one of two options. I can pack it all up, or I can pass the turn. I pass the turn. Why? Because I want to find out what else is in this deck. This is not like a really common archetype, but this isn't, I've never seen this thing before. And in these unusual situations, especially when you're up against any sort of brew, you want to figure out as much as you can possibly find out about their deck. I'm totally dead on board, but who cares? I have nothing in play. I just have lands. And now after I've drawn this one card, I have an unknown card in my hand. So I pass the turn. He untaps, he thinks for a little bit, plays Collective Brutality on me. Now I scoop. Well, I was at 2 life, so he was draining me for 2 as well, but very valuable information. Now I know he can potentially drain me for 2. That means for matches 2 and 3, I should be very careful about letting my life total get anywhere below 3. So that is why you play to the end, and you make sure you force them to turn the card sideways. So yeah, you learn about more cards in their deck. That was that situation, but I've been in a lot of situations where, I'm dead on board or whatever. They've got more creatures than me. But just in case I have like some sort of answer in my hand, they play their hand out. They show me these creatures that I never heard of before. They play these enchantments that I've never seen. Sometimes I'm up against a Bant Eldrazi deck, and then all of a sudden they show me Training Grounds or something like that. It's really important to know those things going into the further games. So you play on for information, even though you're completely dead. It's really, really valuable. So another common situation where you just want to play on when you're completely dead is against control, perhaps against maybe a new version of control or a control deck that you haven't seen in a very long time, and they might have changed their win condition. You play on to find out, how do they beat you? You want to know that going into sideboarding. How I know you've got 7 cards in your hand. It's all removal. It's all counter spells. I have no answer to that in my deck. But how do you beat me? What is it? Is it some enchantment? Is it an artifact? Is it a creature? What is it that you're going to kill me with? And that's why you play on. So you just draw your card, pass the turn. Draw your card, pass the turn. Draw a card, maybe play something, let them counter it. But they for sure know your deck, but you may not know exactly theirs. So you keep passing, and maybe you find out, oh, he's just going to attack me with manlands. That's also very good to know. But how is it that they seal the deal? Maybe it's some sort of blue-white red. Maybe it looked like a blue-white red control deck, but really it was like a blue-white red Geist flash decks. There are a lot of mid-range decks that just end up having a bunch of removal in their hand. And at some point, they actually they end up showing you a bunch of creatures to show that they were actually a mid-range deck instead of a control deck. So you play on for that information, even if you're completely dead. So the next thing I want to talk about is playing to your outs. There are, for example, you might be in a board state that looks totally hopeless and you want to scoop. But really, you should always, if you get a draw step, take that draw step, see what it is, see if it gives you another turn. There's all sorts of, so often people forget about what's in their deck. They'll get a card that was meant to attack something in their deck, but they didn't know that could also attack like what was on the board at the same time. It was an answer to more things that they thought they were in the first place. But the point is that you should always take your draw step if you can have it, and draw to see if there is anything that can prolong the game or is just an outright answer to what's on the board right then and there. Because every so often you're going to make a mistake. You absolutely will make a mistake if you don't take that draw step. Another thing is you should really force your opponent to turn the creatures sideways. It may look like you're dead on board because you know what's in your hand, but your opponent doesn't know what's in your hand. So, for example, let's say you're a Jund deck and you've got 2 Tarmogoyfs on the board, and your opponent has, let's say, 5 creatures that are all 2/2s, and you're at 6 life, and you know if they swing for the win, if they go all out and go wide, you can't block everything and you die, and you're looking at your hand, 3 cards, all lands. And you draw your card for the turn, and it's another land. You can't deal with those 2/2 creatures. A lot of people will scoop here. I mean, I know they scoop against me because they, I have like a bunch of creatures out, but I'm thinking, if they've got a removal spell, I can't actually attack for the win next turn. So I get all sorts of people scooping prematurely for me. Don't be those people. You play on to the bitter end. I'll tell you what this Jund player should do. Pass the turn, because the aggro player might think, oh my god, this guy's got 4 cards in his hand, and if one of them is a removal spell, then he's going to kill one of my creatures, block another 2, and then there's no way I can attack for the win for the rest of the game. So they might actually they might just keep adding to the board and then passing the turn back, giving you another draw step, and that's exactly what you want. There's going to be a lot of situations where people will fear getting completely blown out by something and pass the turn back, and you should, and that's why you should just give them another turn. I mean, let's say I was a Jund deck. I draw a card for the turn. I have all lands in my hand, and this 4th card is another land. And let's say I don't play anything. Let's say I don't play a land drop for the turn. Then that very, very strongly represents I've got like real cards in my hand. I didn't even play a land drop for the turn. So I have to have something. So, that's just one scenario. Even just look at their face. Just look at your face. Look at their face, because when it looks like you're so obviously dead on board and you just pass the turn, they start really thinking, what does he have? What on earth does that guy have that he's not resigning here? He's got to have something. They always think like, he's got to have something. So what is that something? And you know what? You know your deck, but your opponent doesn't know your deck. And they might try to play around cards that you don't even have in your deck. And for that's even more reason to pass the turn back and see if they're going to give you an extra draw step. And I'm telling you, they give you another turn all the time. They'll just give it to you. But it's also funny, like pass the turn and force them to turn their creatures sideways when you're tapped out. They still think, oh my god, what does he have in his hand that he's not resigning here? What am I missing? And think about, like, what is it that you lose here? All it is like 20 seconds. I mean, if you're dead, then it doesn't matter. You're dead anyway. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose in this situation. Just pass the turn, they're going to draw their card, they turn their creatures sideways, and now you scoop. See, because now you're actually dead. Whereas you could pass the turn, they draw their card, and then if they think, well, maybe I have to play around something, they do something else, don't kill you, and then pass the turn back, then you're alive again! Now you have a chance to get back in this game, draw whatever removal spell you need, draw whatever win condition you need, So it doesn't cost you anything to just pass the turn and see what happens. And I'm telling you, watch them sweat. They really start thinking about it. Like, what on earth does he have that he's not resigning here? I'm clearly winning. And most of the time, honestly, they're going to kill you. We're talking like probably 95% of the time. So like 19 out of 20 times, they just kill you on the spot. But you want to fight for that 5%. You want to fight for that 1 out of 20 chance where they give you another draw step, because it can potentially add up to wins. And of course, like I just said, it doesn't really cost you anything. So let's also talk about the golden path to victory. There come situations where you're so dead, where you need exactly perfect things to happen for you to come back in this game. You gotta start thinking like, okay, if he attacks, he can only attack with those 2 creatures, and then if he's gonna use a removal spell, he has to use the removal spell on only this creature of mine, and then I need to draw exactly this card in order to win the game. And it sounds so far-fetched, but if that's the only way you can win the game, then play on for that chance to win the game. And do you know what? If it doesn't happen, then resign at that point. But don't resign if there is a sliver of a chance of you winning the game. Because do you know what? I played this game for 3 years. I've been playing this game for a very long time. But over the last 3 years, I've been thinking about all those scenarios where I needed this, and this to happen. And it happens. It very rarely happens, but it does happen, and it all adds up to my win percentage. And you want to capture every ounce of those wins when you need these perfect path to victory. So you sometimes have to use some imagination. Okay, so like I'm totally dead here, but if he does exactly this and does exactly this, and I make exactly this block, and he has exactly no cards in his hand or something like that, or if he has all lands, and I draw exactly this, then I could possibly win the game, and then you play for that exact route to victory. So, you play on because your opponent might give you an extra draw step. You play on because there might be more outs in your deck than you think, and you play on because sometimes there is a path to victory that you have to just hope happens for whatever reason whatsoever. So are there any exceptions to playing on? The only exception I can think of is in regards to the clock. So let's say you played this match, you had a super long game 1, but you got there. You won game 1. It took like 35 minutes. You spent 5 minutes on sideboarding. You're ready for game 2, but you only have like something like 10 minutes left in the round because you've already soaked up 40 minutes. And then let's say you're losing. You're in really bad shape. Your opponent has a bunch of cards. You have no cards. And your board stays pretty bad. You might just want to pack it in right then and there, not really play to whatever outs you have, because you're probably losing the game most of the time. And the thing is, you really need to give yourself a chance to win game 3. So know when to pack it in when the clock matters. That is the only exception to the rule that I can possibly think of. Another situation I guess you could resign early is if it conceals information. Let's say you got mana screwed, for example, and you're not really in this game. Your opponent is playing a whole lot of stuff, and your odds of winning are like 0.001%. I mean, maybe in some fantasy situation you have a chance, but the problem is they play Inquisition on you, and you've got like these glass cannon sideboard cards in your hand, like maybe Chalice of the Void and Blood Moon, cards that don't normally play in your deck for whatever reason, but you have it. It's your sweet sideboard tech, so you might want to resign early to conceal that information, because it's going to massively change how they're going to sideboard against you going into game 3. So if you play to win, don't resign. Never resign. Fight. Fight to the very end. Force them to turn those cards sideways. Force them to beat you right then and there. You never know when they could still give you a chance, or if you still have a chance. So that was Getting Good, episode 6, Never Resign. As usual, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for making me part of your daily routine, and thank you so much to all my patrons supporting me on Patreon. This has been Nikachu with my Getting Good series.